I didn't expect a parade. Didn't expect balloons or banners or even a warm casserole in the oven. After years in the army, I had learned to temper expectations. But still, I thought there might be a porch light on, a voice from the door, a mother's whisper, a father's nod. Instead, what I got was a text. Don't bother coming this Christmas. We decided it's best you stay away this year. That was it. No greeting, no punctuation, no explanation. Just words that felt like a shut door to a house I used to dream of coming back to. My name is Evelyn Blake, Sergeant First Class, retired, 32 years old. And that night, I sat alone in a one-bedroom apartment 2 states away beneath blinking Christmas lights. I strung myself. I had a glass of red wine in my hand, a plane ticket in my inbox, and a heart I wasn't sure was beating. There was no follow-up message, no sorry, no love, Dad. I replied with one word, fine. Not the kind of fine that hopes someone will ask again. Not the kind that begs between the lines. No, it was the final kind of fine. The kind you send when you've just realized you were never invited to the table. You were only ever allowed to sit quietly beside it. I closed the laptop, deleted the flight confirmation, raised my glass to the empty room, to family. 5 days later, I turned my phone back on. 10 missed calls, 1 from my brother, 4 from my mother, and 1 from a name I hadn't seen in years, Harold Wells, attorney at law. That's when I knew they didn't understand what fine meant. They were still playing the old game, but this time I wasn't the same daughter who left, and they were about to learn what happens when the quiet one stops asking to come home. I was 18 when I enlisted, not because I dreamed of glory, not because I was brave. I joined the army because I needed a reason to exist, because home didn't feel like home. Not with the way my father Gerald Blake looked at me like I was a math error he had to carry for the rest of his life. At my graduation, he didn't hug me, didn't even shake my hand. He said, "Try not to embarrass yourself out there." That was his version of love criticism, sharpened like a hunting knife always pointed just shy of the heart. My mother Linda stood beside him with her hands clasped tight, whispering to no one in particular, "Don't provoke him. Just let it be a good day." She used to be softer, but years of being married to Gerald turned her voice into a habit of hiding. She walked on eggshells so long she forgot how to stand flat on her feet. And then there was Jason, my younger brother. Dad's shadow. Learned early that silence kept the peace, and siding with him meant fewer slammed doors. So I left. But I didn't disconnect. Even from across oceans and sandstorms, I called on birthdays, sent flowers on their anniversary. When Mom mentioned the roof was leaking, I mailed a check. When Jason's car broke down, I wired him money without asking why. They never asked how I managed it, never asked what it cost me physically, mentally. They just cashed it. Sometimes replied with a thumbs-up emoji, sometimes nothing at all. Still, every Christmas I hoped. Not for gifts, not even for thanks. I just wanted to walk in and feel like someone had noticed I came back alive. I didn't need parades, I didn't need medals, I just wanted to sit at the table and not feel like an empty chair. But year after year, it was always the same. Dad would ask me to shovel the driveway before I took off my boots. Mom would pretend not to see the tension. Jason would glance up from his phone, maybe nod. That was home, a place where I was tolerated but never welcomed. And still, I kept hoping. That's what broke me the most. Not the rejection, but that even after everything I kept hoping anyway. This year was supposed to be different, my final year in uniform. My papers were signed, my pension modest but enough, my back still aching but no longer bleeding. I wanted to come home, not for closure, not even for forgiveness, just for something quieter than all that. I had imagined it simple me in the kitchen with Mom laughing over half-burnt cookies, Jason telling me about his job, his girlfriend, whatever piece of a life he was building, and Dad, maybe just one sentence. "You did good. I wasn't expecting magic, just presence. A place to sit where I didn't have to prove I belonged." So I booked the ticket in early December. Spent my off hours at base browsing recipes looking up gifts. I bought a small scarf for Mom Green with little silver leaves. Jason's favorite bourbon wrapped in brown paper. For Dad, a framed copy of my last commendation letter. I thought maybe he'd hang it in the hallway, or at least read it. But the message came before any of that. No argument, no build-up. Just a text that detonated all the quiet hope I had been holding in my chest. Don't bother coming this Christmas. We decided it's best you stay away this year. No, we love you. No, it's complicated. Just that clinical. Final. And it wasn't just Dad. Mom didn't follow up. Jason didn't check in. 3 people who shared my blood, and not one of them reached for me. I sat in my kitchen with the blinking lights I'd strung myself gifts still in their boxes, and realized something I hadn't let myself say out loud before. I wasn't invited. Not just this year, maybe not ever. I typed out a reply, paused, erased the whole thing, typed again. Fine, that was all. Not bitter, not baiting. Just a quiet confirmation that I'd finally stopped asking for a seat at a table that had already been cleared. Then I closed my laptop, canceled the flight, poured a glass of wine, and raised it to the silence, to family. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't even plan a response. I just needed to stop thinking. So I did what soldiers do in quiet moments I organized. I went digging through my old Army email archive, the kind of inbox no one really deletes. Memos, scanned forms, deployment orders, forgotten attachments. That's when I saw it. A digital copy of a mortgage co-signing agreement 5 years old, flagged as executed, signed by my father, signed by me, stamped, witnessed, legal. At first, I didn't think much of it. Dad had asked me to sign something when I was home on leave, said it was just a technicality. The bank needed a stronger applicant. His credit wasn't ideal. He made it sound small, like helping a friend jumpstart their car. And back then, I was still in my 20s, still desperate for something from him. So I signed, never asked what it meant, never followed up. I didn't even keep the hard copy. But there, it was tucked in that inbox like a whisper from the past. This time I read it slowly, line by line, clause by clause. And in plain legal language, one sentence reached out and shook me. In the event of primary borrower default or voluntary transfer, cosigner assumes controlling interest over the property until full loan maturity. Controlling interest. Not partial, not symbolic. Controlling. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. While my father was busy cutting me out, he'd forgotten something. On paper, I wasn't just his daughter. I was his co-owner. No, I was the majority owner. He needed me once, to save face with the bank. And I had shown up, in uniform, no questions asked. But now he was about to find out what happens when the daughter you used starts reading the fine print. I didn't call them. I didn't warn them. I didn't even tell a friend. I simply opened a notebook and started writing, not a letter filled with anger or grief. No confessions, no guilt, just the facts, calm, precise, formal. Effective immediately, I will be exercising my controlling interest as co-signer and legal partial owner of the property located at 12 Windmere Lane. All legal rights and responsibilities will be enacted through counsel. You will be contacted shortly. That was it. No threats. No drama. Just truth they had forgotten. I printed the letter, signed it with my full name and military rank, and mailed it certified old school intentional. Let them open it together. Let them read it around the same kitchen table where they once handed me store-brand gift cards and told me not to talk about war stories because it made Dad uncomfortable. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I booked a cabin in the Smoky Mountains. Quiet, wood-paneled, far from any town big enough to make noise. Christmas came early that year, snow on the roof, a fire in the hearth, no tree, no ornaments, but peace. The kind you earn, not buy. I turned my phone off and left it that way for 5 full days. No buzz, no screens, just the hiss of wind against the cabin windows and the soft creak of time slowing down. When I finally turned it back on, 10 missed calls waited, 1 from Jason, 4 from my mother, 3 unknowns, 1 from a number that froze the back of my neck, Harold Wells, attorney at law. It was almost funny. 5 years ago, they needed me to sign. Now, suddenly, they needed me to forget. But here's the thing, I had spent years letting things slide, letting things go, letting them talk over me, forget me, push me out without having to lift a finger. Not this time. This time, the paper had my name, and they were going to have to say it out loud. The calls kept coming. I didn't answer a single one. Not because I wanted to punish anyone, because I had nothing left to explain. On the 6th day, I finally picked up. It was Jason. His voice came through in a panic, like he was mid-run, like maybe this time he realized I wasn't bluffing. "Evelyn, what the hell is this? Dad's freaking out. There's talk of lawyers. He thinks he's getting evicted." "What are you doing?" I stirred the coffee in my mug and let the question hang in the air before answering. "I'm executing my rights," I said evenly, the same way Dad executed his decision to tell me not to come home. There was a silence on his end, and for a second I thought he might say something that sounded like reflection. But then came the defense. "You're really going to kick them out over a stupid text, no, Jason," I said quietly. "I'm not kicking anyone out yet. That one word 'yet' did all the work for me. I didn't need to yell. I just needed them to sit with that possibility." He stammered something I didn't catch and then said, "You know how Dad is." "Yes, Jason?" I replied, "I know exactly how he is. And that's why I'm doing this. Because people like my father rely on silence. They count on your loyalty, your guilt, your need. They teach you early that asking for love is weakness and then punish you for still needing it. But I didn't need crumbs anymore. I had a contract. And for the first time in my life, I had leverage." The next call was from their lawyer, Harold Wells. He tried to sound composed, but the strain cracked through. "Miss Blake, I believe there may have been some misunderstanding. The letter you sent has caused considerable concern." "There's no misunderstanding," I replied. "The documents are valid. I've reviewed the terms with my counsel. I am invoking control." He paused. I could hear him swallow. Then he pivoted. "Perhaps we could explore options. A buyout, maybe a restructuring of the note." That's when it clicked. They weren't just nervous. They were scared, because for the first time, Gerald Blake wasn't in control, and the one he'd pushed out of the house now held the keys. After the call with Harold Wells, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was something closer to clarity, like I had just wiped fog from a mirror and finally saw the full shape of what had been done to me, not in one moment, but over years. Later that evening, I got a call from Reggie Carter, the property manager I'd worked with back on base. He had done the initial walkthrough at 12 Windmere Lane, just as I'd requested quiet, professional, no drama. "Your folks weren't thrilled to see us," he said, "but we kept it respectful. Just like you asked." I asked him how bad it was expecting a rundown of peeling paint or an aging roof. He exhaled. "Cosmetically, it's fine. Structurally, though, basement leaks mold starting to form under the west-facing windows, and the attic reno is half-finished." He hesitated. "But that's not the part you need to hear." I waited. "There are 2 tenants, Evelyn. Young, college-aged. One's living in Jason's old room. The other's in yours. No lease, no paperwork. Looks like cash deals." I checked the drawers and the entryway receipts for rent and cash handwritten. I didn't speak. My mouth had gone dry. Not from rage, not from surprise, from insult. They hadn't just told me I wasn't welcome. They had turned my legal property into a side hustle, rented out the room I came home to on holiday leave, the room where I used to lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hoping for the sound of someone knocking just once to say they were glad I made it back alive. I hung up with Reggie, walked to my desk, and opened a new document. This time it wasn't polite. It was a formal 30-day notice of management transition and legal suspension of all rent collection. Sublease agreements were null. All communication would now go through counsel. And at the bottom, I signed my full name. Evelyn Blake, Sergeant First Class U.S. Army Ret, legal co-owner. 12 Windmere Lane. Then I texted Jason 3 words. "Check your mailbox." The voicemails came in fast after that, one after another, like a string of firecrackers going off in slow motion. I didn't listen to them, not because I didn't care, but because I already knew how they'd sound. My mother's voice caught between guilt and denial. My brother trying to mediate without picking a side. And my father. If he spoke at all, it would only be to reassert control, not to understand. I let them talk to air. See, there's a moment every soldier knows. It's not the first shot, it's not the last breath, it's that second when your boots hit solid ground and you realize you survived. Everything after that is quieter, more dangerous. That's what this felt like. I wasn't retaliating, I wasn't even reacting, I was responding with clarity. So I finalized the document and forwarded it to Harold Wells. Effective January 2nd, all legal rights to the property at 12 Windmere Lane would transfer to me as managing owner. 30-day notice. Pending inspection. Possible termination of current residency. All rent payments suspended. Any further communication was to be directed through legal counsel. But I wasn't done. I hired a veteran-run property management company people who knew what it meant to carry weight quietly. They would arrive after the holiday to begin formal transition. Not to change locks or toss furniture, just to make it clear the house didn't belong to them anymore. Not in practice, not on paper. That night, I sat by the fireplace in the cabin. No stockings, no tree, no music playing from another room. But there was heat. There was stillness. And above all, there was something I hadn't felt in years: control. I didn't need them to fall apart. I didn't need an apology screamed over a voicemail. I only needed them to see what it felt like when someone who never fought back finally used the tools they gave her. The deed, the signature, the silence. I wasn't taking anything away from them. I was just reminding them whose name was on the deed. January 2nd arrived with sharp wind and low gray skies. Snow lined the street in stiff ridges where the plow had passed, and the air carried that heavy silence winter keeps for special days, the kind that feels like something's about to break whether you want it to or not. I didn't come alone. I arrived at 12 Windmere Lane with Reggie, my property manager, a locksmith, and a folder of documents in my hand. I wore a black wool coat, my boots polished, and my army dog tags beneath my collar, not to prove a point, just to remind myself who I had become. My father opened the door, face red, breath sharp, like he'd been pacing the hallway for an hour, waiting to explode. "What the hell is this circus, Evelyn?" he snapped. I didn't answer right away. I stepped past him, calm and focused. This wasn't his foyer anymore. "This is a legal transition of ownership and property management," I said. "As of this morning, all rights associated with this home fall under my direct control." My mother stood at the base of the stairs holding the rosary she only ever took out for holidays or arguments. Jason sat on the couch, elbows on knees, face pale. He didn't look at me. "You're evicting your own family," Dad growled. "This is our home." "No," I said evenly. "It's my investment. One you defaulted on and handed to me when I was 24 and still in uniform because the bank wouldn't trust your credit." That shut him up. I looked around the living room. The photo of me in boot camp, once framed above the mantel, was gone. In its place was a mirror I didn't recognize, one that reflected people who had erased me. I kept going. The illegal tenants have already been notified. If they're not out in 10 days, I'll file for trespassing. Any damage or interference with this process will result in criminal charges. Mom's voice cracked. "But where will we go?" I met her eyes without flinching. "I don't know, Mom. Maybe not home for Christmas." She covered her mouth and turned away. Jason stood up, maybe to speak, maybe to apologize, but I raised a hand. "I don't need words. I needed them 10 years ago. Now I need boundaries." Behind me, the locksmith changed the code on the front door. I didn't look back. They didn't fight it. No last-minute calls, no angry letters, no dramatic pleas, just silence. The kind that comes not from peace, but from people finally realizing you weren't bluffing. January 31st came and went, and by the morning of February 1st, the house at 12 Windmere Lane was empty. I arrived just after sunrise, a fresh key in hand. The snow had started to melt, revealing patches of dead grass beneath. 3 cars had once filled the driveway. Now only mine. I stepped inside and let the door close behind me. There was no note, no apology, no trace of goodbye. Only stillness. I walked through each room slowly. The living room was bare, except for a long scratch across the hardwood right where the coffee table used to sit, the one I bought with my first deployment check, and they insisted had always been theirs. In Jason's old room, I found a duffel bag tag from some ski trip I was never invited to. The kind of thing that wouldn't matter to most people, but to me, it was a reminder that even when I was alive, I had been a ghost in my own family. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I had already felt it all over years in silence, in every ignored message and every moment I showed up just to be invisible. In the kitchen, I opened the back door and let the wind in. It was cold, sharp, honest, the kind of air that doesn't pretend. I stood there for a while, letting it move through the hallways like a reset. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about restoring something I didn't even know I'd lost: my dignity, my name, my place. I wasn't the daughter they could ignore anymore. I was the woman who had survived them, and now I was home. Not because they welcomed me, but because I no longer needed their permission to belong. I didn't move into the house. I could have. Legally, emotionally, even symbolically. But I didn't want to live in a place where I had once been erased. I didn't want to eat at a table where no one had ever waited for me to sit down. Instead, I chose something else. I turned the house into transitional housing for female veterans, women like me, who came back from service only to find there was no door open, no couch to sleep on, no one who understood how hard it is to return to silence after chaos. We called it the Monroe House, not for legacy, but for reclamation, a name I'd buried years ago behind military rank and family shame. Now it meant something different. Now it meant survival. Reggie helped with the renovations. We didn't change the bones of the place, just the feeling. We painted the walls warmer, fixed the basement leak, pulled out the mold, tore down what needed tearing down. In the old living room, we added a bookshelf filled with paperbacks from women who wrote about war, about silence, about choosing yourself when no one else will. A local newspaper ran the story a few months later. Veteran reclaims family, home to house, others like her. The headline felt neat, easy. Like the pain had a clean resolution. Reporters called. One asked if I had anything to say to the people who left me behind. I said no, because it wasn't about them anymore. It was never really about revenge. It was about healing in a place that once hurt, about proving to myself more than anyone that I didn't need a family's permission to take up space. Now, every Christmas I light a single candle on the front porch. No tree, no wreath. Just a flame in the dark. It's not for them. It's not even for me now. It's for the girl who once stood in that driveway, bag and hand boots, still dusty from somewhere far away, waiting for someone to say, "We're glad you're home." No one said it then. So now I light the candle for her, and make sure no woman like her ever stands outside that door again.